Hello and welcome to this video about multiplying and dividing rational numbers. The learning target for this lesson is multiplying and dividing positive and negative fractions and decimals. So first, a quick disclaimer. I'm going to assume that you know how to multiply and divide fractions and decimals, so we will not go into detail about that. What we will focus on is how to do this when you're dealing with positive and negative fractions and decimals. And so like I said in a similar video about adding and subtracting rational numbers, the rules are very similar to that. So the first one is we just do normal multiplication and division with fractions and decimals. So multiplication and division with fractions and decimals. Likewise, we're going to do normal rules with negatives and positives. And all we're doing in this, by adding and subtracting or multiplying and dividing rational numbers, is combining it all together. So applying the appropriate multiplication division rules with signs being taken into consideration, whether it's going to be positive or negative. So let's walk through some examples and see what happens. So for our first example, we're going to deal with some fractions. Let's say we have negative 2 3/5 being multiplied by negative 3 1/3. So when you're multiplying mixed numbers, it's really important that we make them improper fractions. And so we'll use what I like to call my C technique, where we go around and we multiply and then we add. And so in order to switch these mixed numbers into improper fractions, we'll end up getting 2 times 5, which is 10, plus 3 is 13. So negative 13 over 5. And then we'll times that by 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. 10 over 3, and again I can't forget my negative sign on that one. So now I got two things. First, I can realize that I'm going to have a positive number because I'm multiplying two negative numbers. And when you're multiplying two negatives together, they cancel each other out and you have a positive. So my final answer will be positive. Next, I can focus on multiplying my numbers, my fractions. And so what I'm seeing is I can reduce the 10 and the 5, so I'll do that. I can take a 5 out and get 5 and 2. And so that leaves me with 13 times 2 for 26 over 1 times 3, which is 3. So if I wanted to, I could leave it as is, or I could go 8 2/3. And again, it's positive because we had two negatives being multiplied together. Let's do another example. Let's say we had 7/12 divided by a negative 4/3. So in a situation like this, what I'm going to need to do is keep, change, flip, where I will keep my first fraction, 7 over 12, change my symbol from division to multiplication, and then flip my fraction by taking the reciprocal. Oh, I meant to make that negative 4/3. So that'll be negative 3/4. Now I go about my multiplication. What I see right off the bat is I have a positive and a negative. So my final answer is going to be a negative number. And here I can now work on reducing my or any like terms. So here I have a 3 and a 12, and so that's going to be taken out as 1 and not 3. That'll be 4. And so I have 7 times 1 for 7 over 4 times 4, which is 16. And that's my final answer for this one. And again, it's because I have one positive and one negative. So that's how we do this with fractions. Now let's talk about decimals. Process, again, is very, very similar. We use our rules for decimals and just keep an eye on the signs. So let's say we had negative 6.3 divided by 9. So what I'm going to do is set this up with some long division here. So I'm going to be looking at 9 into negative 6.3. I don't need to do anything with my 9 for the decimal, so the decimal stays put here. And I just kind of think of this 6.3 as 63, and the numbers fall where they fall around the decimal. The other thing I'm going to see, I notice, is that I have a positive and then a negative number right there, meaning that my final answer will be negative, because I have one positive and one negative. And now I just go about my division. So 9 goes into 6 0 times, but it goes into 63 7 times. And I'll get 63, no remainder, and I'm done. So my final answer is negative 0.7. Let's do another one, but this time with multiplication. Let's say we had negative 3.2, and we're going to times this by negative 8.4. So I'm just going to treat this like double-digit multiplication. 3.2, 8.4. Noticing that both of these are negative, they're going to cancel each other out and become positive. And now I just have to crunch the numbers here. So let's see here. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 4 is 12. I got 0. 6. Carry a 1. 3 times 4 is 20, or 3 times 8 is 24. Carry that 1 is 25. Now I combine my numbers here. Let's go with 8, 8, 6, 2, and then I have 2 spots after the decimal, so I go here and I go 1, 2, and my final answer is going to be a positive 26.88. And so that's how we deal with decimals. Finally, let's do an example where we have both. Just like with adding and subtracting, you have to make sure that they are in the same form. So write in the same form. And what that means is that we're writing them as either fractions or as decimals. And so let's say we add this problem. Negative 7, oops, not point, negative 7 and 3/10, not plus, times negative 2.5. Now here, there's not a wrong way to do this. You could pick to put them both into fractions, and so you could do it that way, or you could do decimals. So what I'll do actually is I'll just kind of draw a line in the sand here, and I'll show you both of them. So let's say for this side we'll go decimal, and this side will go fraction. So if I went decimal, I'd have negative 7, and then instead of saying 3/10, I just say 7.3 times by negative 2.5. And for that, I have to crunch some numbers here. So first of all, because they're both negative, they're going to become positive, and I'm looking at 7.3 times 2.5. And so that will give me what, 5, carry that 1, 6, then here 0, 6, and 1, 4. And so now here I have 5, 2, 8, 1, 2 spots after the decimal, 18.25. So that's one answer. If I do it with fractions, I can make this negative 7 and 3/10 times negative 2 and 1/2. Here I would have to convert these to improper fractions. So I would get negative 73 over 10 times negative 5 over 2. Do some reducing. Here I end up getting, let's see here, so 1, 5, take that back, 2. And so what I'm looking at is negative 73 over 4. Oh, and then since I have 2 negatives, those become positive, so that negative goes away. I'm looking at 73 divided by 4, and so if I were to crunch those numbers, I would get the exact same thing, which is 18.25. And so let's see here, the closest multiple of 4, it would be 72. Whoops. So 72 is the closest multiple of 4. And so 72 divided by 4, that is actually 18. So this would be 18 and 1/4. And so either way, it works out. It's up to you, though, which way you want to write it. And some fractions are easier to write as decimals, other decimals are easier to write as fractions, so it really depends on the problem. But the thing is, you have to make sure it's in the same form. And that's how we multiply and divide rational numbers. So good luck with your homework or practice, and let me know if you have any questions.